Yeah, again, I want to encourage everyone, if you feel moved, to jump in and, let's make this a time to share, because, it's like a fear shared is a fear halved, or words to that effect. And what we're really talking about this week is, the kind of the anxieties that I know all of us are feeling at one level or another. I mean, Lord knows, um, this year has been filled with anxiety. It's almost been like, if you ever read um, Bloom County or Outland, the cartoon, there was this kid named Binkley who had something he called the closet of anxieties. And when he would try to go to bed at night, these various things would come out of his closet of anxieties and disturb him in various ways. And this year has been almost like just a wide open closet of anxieties. And the things that I've listed here are just, I mean, they're certainly big ones. And I'm sure that I haven't got a complete list. And, for Haley, you're joining us by phone. What I have on here is COVID-19, unemployment and business failures, healthcare access and affordability, racial tension, injustice, concern over judicial extremism, the stake of the election, global warming, and extreme weather. And that's not an all-inclusive list. So, I think that we were just talking last night about a couple of the kids that we know that, either like Natalie are, trying to negotiate going to classes during this pandemic, or, especially kids like Abby and Sarah, who are college freshmen, and it's their first year away from home, and they're in a strange place, and they can't even make friends, because everybody's being kept separate. They're attending classes, even though they're away from home, they're largely attending classes virtually or completely attending classes virtually, and they're isolated. And so it's extremely difficult and extremely anxiety producing. And this week is, kind of like almost like a culminating event of, all the crazy that this year has led us to. It's kind of coming to a head. So much of the division and the tension and the fighting that's gone on in our country, it comes down to Tuesday. Not to belittle all of the voting that's gone on up till today. And I think, I've seen a couple of times in the past day or two that so far the early voting this year has just about matched the total votes cast in 2016. So I think we're, on pace to set a record for the number of Americans participating in an election. And I find it really sad that it took this much divisiveness to get this many people to participate in the process. This process that so many of our ancestors were not able to participate in. Now, guys that look like me, no problem, right? But the rest of y'all, didn't get to vote until about 100 years ago, right? And, then there are the, people of color, many of whom are still fighting to get the vote over, one thing or another. I mean, we still have a lot of people whose votes are being suppressed. And that just, if there's anything that we all should have at this point, it's the right to, go freely to a polling place or to the post office or, to the mailbox and drop our ballot in and have it count and have it counted, right? So, what I have on the slide, Haley, is that speaking Wednesday at his first in-person campaign event supporting Joe Biden, former President Barack Obama called 2020, quote, the most important election of our entire lifetime. And as I was doing some research for this, I found it very interesting. It seems like just about every election they say, this is the most important election that ever was, right? Well, whether President Obama was right about that or not, this one really does feel like the most important election of, many of our lives. I mean, it certainly feels that way for me, and I'm 60 years old. I can remember, my memory goes back to John F. Kennedy being shot. Right? I just remember the adults were all really upset. I remember, kind of having to sneak out of bed and spy on them while they were glued to the TV, like, one of the 2 or 3 channels that we got watching the news coverage. So, I've seen a lot of elections, and some of them were, really did mean something, but boy, this is a whole, to me, at least, this is a whole, quantum level or 2 above the others. And it's vitally important that we get through this and get through it together. But I know that the stakes seem so high, it's like some of us are having trouble breathing. So I thought it would be helpful to kind of frame some things we could do to get through this week together. I actually found a blog or a paper written by this therapist on handling election anxiety. And there were 3 big pieces that she shared that I thought were really worth, at least going into. And the 3 big things that she pulled out were to adopt an expansive mindset, to curb the urge, and to welcome negative emotion. And I'll unpack those just a little bit. So when she says adopt an expansive mindset, this is how she kind of unpacks that. She says, our mind's tendency is to contract around all the negative outcomes that may happen: the possibility of losing, disputed vote counts, widespread litigation, protests, and social unrest. If we think we can only rest and relax once these negative outcomes are eliminated, we'll burn ourselves out with ineffectual activity and worry, right? And boy, does that ever, sound familiar? It's like in our minds, usually what it tends to eat us up is what could go wrong, what could go wrong, what could go wrong. I may be a little more positive than some folks, and every once in a while I'll find myself thinking, wow, what if this really goes well? But generally that's not where our mind goes. Our mind tends to go with what could go wrong, right? So she says, to counter this tendency, make an intention to allow unresolved possibilities to remain unresolved. For example, once I've done what is within my control, I will accept the uncertainty that remains. Just say, okay, I've done everything I can. I'm good. I'm not going to sit here and keep worrying after I've done everything I can possibly do. Right? I'm just going to accept some uncertainty. I'm going to accept a little, who knows, and drive on with the mission. All right. Now, one of the ways that kind of helps that is to do something she calls curb the urge. And this one is kind of tough for a lot of us. She says, notice the ineffectual activity you're impulsively engaging in, trying to gain certainty about the election, and curb it. And these are the examples: constantly checking news feeds for signs that your side is winning, name calling, trying to convince others that they are wrong, and replaying political talking points repeatedly in your head. All certainty-seeking behaviors are triggered by our overactive limbic system, and they only feed the cycle of worry and anxiety. When we curb the urge to reassure ourselves instead, we are cultivating a new expansive mindset, demonstrating to ourselves that we can tolerate uncertainty, right? So it's again, being willing to step out into the void and say, okay, I don't know. And it's okay that I don't know. And she, when she talks about our limbic brain, it really gets back to that, some of those lower brainstem functions of, is this thing dangerous or is it not dangerous? You know, going back to, you know, prehistoric times on the savannah, when it was like, am I going to get eaten or am I going to find something I can eat? We want to know. We want to be able to identify the thing and know it. And by knowing, we'll know I'm safe. And what we have to be willing to accept is, I'm as safe as I'm going to be, even if I don't know, and be able to live with that. And one of the, you know, the third thing that she suggests as a way of dealing with this is learning how to welcome negative emotion. And it's interesting, as I was researching this, you know, it's funny, and I've kind of learned that toxic positivity is a thing, you know, and that in spite of everything I learned in Unity, which is about how to deny the power that the negative has over my interior mental landscape and the ability to kind of push myself into a positive mindset, we have to make peace with the dark, right? We have to be able to grieve. We have to be able to be sad. If you've ever seen Inside Out, the Pixar movie about our emotions, right? Sometimes sadness is the only thing that's going to fix us, but we have to be willing to sit with our sadness, like Mr. What's his name? The, you know, the toy that got lost. Anyway, we have to be willing to sit with our sadness until it's healed us, until it's time to move on. So she says, treat these emotions as you would a guest, welcoming them by name. Hello, anger. Come on in, dread. Use your breath to open up space in your body, space for these feelings to play themselves out. Contrary to what you think, fight or flight neurochemicals and hormones do metabolize on their own. To help this process along, redirect your thoughts back to your expansive mindset, which accepts everything you can't directly control, including your own fears. And this reminded me of one of my favorite meditations that I have found in the Insight Meditation Timer is about welcoming, not only welcoming my fear, but learning from my fear. And in this meditation, Sarah, the person who's leading the meditation, engages her fear in a conversation. And she asks it, you know, what is it that you're here to teach me? And I think I've talked once or twice about an exercise called deep journaling. And in deep journaling, what we do is we start a conversation with something. And in this case, it could be, I'm going to have a conversation with my fear of blank, whatever that is. And you start a conversation, and it might sound something like, okay, fear of whatever it is. What are you here to teach me? And then you write down fear of whatever it is, like it's line, and then you write whatever it says to you, and then you would continue the conversation. You know, in journaling, in the class in seminary where I learned this, you know, I did everything from, you know, kind of talk to my own anger to talk to my own dad. And it's kind of funny to find out they're actually related, right? But things come out of you when you allow those things to have their own voice. It's fascinating to find out the stuff that's stuck in your subconscious. So, you know, that's just something that you can do. It's another exercise that you can do to help process negative emotions. Give them a voice, you know, let them speak. You know, whether it's in meditation, I'm going to breathe and I'm going to, you know, like kind of breathe into my fear or my anger or my anxiety, whatever it is, or I'm actually going to start a conversation with it, which I can do in meditation or I can do by journaling. It's all good stuff. So some more tips that I unearthed for this coming week. And one of them is to practice mindfulness. And there are, you know, thousands of ways to practice mindfulness, but just a couple of real easy, quick ones that you can do without a whole lot of preparation. All right. So real simple, and this is something that we can all do, is just unplug. And it's funny, I actually gave an entire talk one time at, I think it was at Unity of Birmingham, on unplugging. right? And the example here is just to say, I'm going to take a 30-minute break, and I'm not going to touch an electronic anything for 30 minutes. I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm not going to open my computer. I'm not going to turn on the TV. I'm not going to have a radio. I'm nothing electronic. Going to unplug entirely for 30 minutes. Just be with the universe for a while. Another one that I'm kind of guilty of sort of by default, and that's mindful eating. Now, yeah, a lot of times I'll sit there, I'll have especially if Laura's not there, I'll sit there by myself with my phone on. And recently we've been watching the Great British Baking Show while we eat. Kind of help work up an appetite, right? But to really focus on the sensation of eating, to really, feel the food in your mouth and to really taste it. You ever get through with eating something and it's like, what did I just have? And it's like, I put something in my body, not sure what it was, but, okay, it's in there. Because our minds go someplace completely, we don't get it. And that's one thing also that can help us with controlling how much we eat, is to become conscious of the experience and feeling. I've always really kind of savored food. You can tell by looking at me, I'm not a skinny guy. But I remember one time this is back when I was an undergraduate in theater. A buddy of mine and I were talking, and he said that he had seen me. I was in a scene. I was a theater student. I was in an acting scene that he watched. And in the scene, I was eating some yogurt, I think. And he thought that I was like making what we would call an independent activity, which is an acting tool, out of the way I was eating it. But then he said he realized later on, after like eating lunch with me, that that's the way I eat all the time, that I really pay attention to my food and I'm really, tasting it. That's like a mindfulness example. One that I hadn't thought of that I read in this, series of mindfulness tips was mindful driving. And boy, I have to say, there have been a lot of times where I'll be driving down the road and I'll suddenly kind of come to and realize I don't remember paying any attention to driving for the past several miles. It's like I'm several miles down the road, not sure how I got there, because I don't remember like looking out at the road. I don't remember looking down at my speedometer or anything. I just like, wow, okay, I came back from wherever it is my mind went for a walk. But mindful driving is like you have your radio off and you don't zone out like I'm guilty of sometimes. And you really like look at what's in front of you, really you kind of like feel the engine. Laura is looking to get a stick shift for her next car, which I think is one of those things that really pulls us back into the physical activity of the driving. And so that's the idea, is that we become very aware of the fact that we are physically moving through the landscape instead of just sort of zoning out in our little bubble as it flies through space. And then finally, meditation as a means of practicing mindfulness. And, you guys have heard me talk about meditation and talk about some of the techniques, but, just for a quick reminder, if you're not already meditating on a regular basis this week, for your own good, right? Just set a time and start with 5 minutes, to say, okay, I may do this completely 100% wrong. As my buddies in the 12-step communities like to say, trying to meditate is meditating, even if it goes horribly wrong and you can't get the monkey mind to stop, you meditated for 5 minutes. Okay. There are a lot of free tools out there that you can use. And I both use and recommend one called Insight Meditation Timer. It is a free app. If you're an Android person, you can go to the Play Store. If you're an Apple person, you can go to the Apple Store, and it's a free download. Yes, there are things you can subscribe to in there, but just on the free side of it, there are over 10,000 guided meditations. And then there's also a timer that you can use that you can set up some like accompanying background noise, like I like one that sounds like a bubbling brook and there's rain or, kind of like wind, just sort of white noise. There's a lot of different things that you can do to help, get your mind out of all the different thoughts that are going on. Now, the simplest, thing to focus on when you meditate, even without having to download anything, is you just focus on your breath. If we are genuinely engaged with our breath, it's almost impossible to be thinking about something else. Now, what happens, all the time when we do this until we get really good at it is I'll be thinking about my breath and then a thought will come in and then I'll follow that thought, right? When I do that, the thing to do is not to get angry or to say I'm doing this wrong and get frustrated. Just go back and say, okay, well, where's my breath right now? Is it going in or out? What do I feel? As the breath is moving in, do I feel it coming through my nose right now? Or is it on the back of my throat? Am I feeling my chest getting bigger, my stomach getting bigger? And then when I'm exhaling, it's the same thing. Where is it that I'm feeling it in my body? And just really focusing on the breath going in and out. And that's a really, really simple focus. Now, there are other things that we can use as focuses. I remember when I was a teenager, I had kind of stopped believing in the Baptist church, and I was exploring some other things. And I had gotten this book on meditation, and it talked about having a little object. And I had this paperweight that a friend of mine had given me as a birthday present, I think. And it was like a acrylic or lucite little paperweight that had like a 50-cent piece suspended in the middle of it. And so I would just sit that down and meditate on that, right? But if you had a painting or a picture or something that was visually compelling that you could kind of lose your thought in, you could use that. We can also use a mantra, which is simply a short, like a word or even a syllable. Om is the classic one that some people think of. And it's short for Om Mani Padme Hum. But whether it's a word, a phrase, a syllable, whatever, and if you're going to use a phrase, I would suggest keeping it to about 12 words or less. But it's something that you can just repeat over and over again without having to think about it, right? And something simple like, I am safe, I am at peace. I am safe, I am at peace. I am safe, I am at peace. And just kind of let that lead you into meditation. And then, finally, very often I like to use, or not just me, a lot of people like to use either instrumental music, because words can sometimes trigger thoughts, but instrumental music or some kind of white noise like the stuff I was mentioning that you can get in the Insight Meditation Timer, whether it is, the sound of a rainforest or a babbling brook or, a thunderstorm or, wind in the leaves. But something simply to allow us to focus our concentration on a sense without it invoking thought. Okay, that's kind of the dividing line. So aside from mindfulness, there are some other things that we can do that help us when we get stressed. And I'm doing one of them right now. I'm drinking some water, right? But these are all things that your doctor would tell you, right? Get plenty of sleep, eat healthy, drink plenty of water, get regular exercise, stay in touch with the people who are dear to you, and stay productive. Yeah, you guys are doing it. Stay productive, even if it's just in small things, to be able to feel like we accomplished something. Go for that low-hanging fruit. If all you feel like you're up against today is I'm going to, clear out this one junk drawer, right? If at the end of the day you've done that, you feel like, I did something today, right? Because what the temptation is when we get under stress, at least I know me, right? I tend to want to throw the rule book away and say, now would be a great time to binge watch all 8 Harry Potter films, right? And, then it's 3:00 in the morning and I have to be up at 7, and then 7:00 rolls around. I don't feel really good. Okay. Or now would be a great time to eat half a carton of Ho-Hos, right? It really isn't. Even though it might make me, it might, produce some endorphins or something for a short period of time. When I'm done, I'm going to really feel like crap, A, when the sugar wears off, B, when I realize, wow, I just ate enough carbohydrates to wipe out my macros for the next week, So instead of giving in to, that, oh, hey, it's Disneyland and calories don't count, or whatever that feeling is, right? It's like, let's really take care of ourselves. Let's really do those things that support our bodies and support our minds and help us out. So this one's hard, and it's been hard for a long time. And obviously it's been hard because Jesus talked about it. Okay. Anxiety, it has a long history with the human race. Okay. It's funny. I think every time I want to talk about something, I always kind of ask myself, did Jesus teach anything about this? Right. So it's like we're talking about anxiety and how we're going to feel this week. Did Jesus talk about the election week? Well, kind of in a way. And this is actually like my favorite passage in scripture of all time, period. Right. This is Luke chapter 12, verses 22 to 34. He said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? And can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your span of life? If then you are not able to do so small a thing as that, why do you worry about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not keep striving for what you are to eat and what you are to drink, and do not keep worrying. For it is the nations of the world that strive after all these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, strive for his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourselves that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Does everybody remember where else we can find, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also? It's on the tombstone of Albus Dumbledore's mother and sister.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I think that, what JKR was saying was that Albus had realized what had been important to him and what should have been important to him. Right? Now, there's a dividing line. I know that this verse makes it seem like we can just be tra-la-la and all run around naked in the grass and not have to worry about anything, right? I don't really think that's what Jesus meant. I believe that we all still have those things that are ours to do. And so I'm going to leave you with one last prayer that I think, we all are familiar with, that I like because it really lays it out, at least for me, in terms that make sense. And that's the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. It's sometimes it's a little scary to do those things that we think are ours to do. Some of the protests I've gone to in the past year, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen when I leave the house. It's like, I make sure Laura stays home so she can bail me out if she has to. So far, she hadn't had to, right? But, in my case, it took a little courage to, put this collar on and head to the places that I've gone. There's some things that aren't mine to do. And sometimes it's really hard for me to accept that, but I can't save the whole world, right? So what I have to do is hopefully have the wisdom to know the things that are mine to do and to accept the things that aren't mine to do. And then those things are mine to do, have the courage to get off the couch and get out there and get after them. And, that this week is really, really important, so all the, it's almost all over, but the voting, right? So if you haven't done so already, make sure you vote, because that is absolutely a thing that is ours to do. And, I got 10 tips for safe voting from CNN. So if you haven't already voted, it's too late to do it by mail, right? So if like me, you're going to go to the poll at some point on Tuesday, here's 10 quick tips to help make it safer. Number 1, spend most of your weight outdoors. 2, vote at a less busy time of day. Okay, so, right before people have to go to work, lunchtime, and right after people get off work are the busiest times. If you can go, between, say, 9 and noon and between 1 and 5, probably going to have a little less of a wait. Avoid crowded ride-sharing services, buses, or trains. Carefully choose your mask. And what they expanded on there was the masks that have 2 or 3 layers of cotton tend to work better than if you're just wearing a bandana or just wearing a gaiter. Those don't do as much. Cover your nose. How many of us have seen people wandering around with their mask under their nose, right? We all have. It's silly. It's like, okay, you're trying to make it look good, but you're not actually helping. Follow social distancing rules. Bring sanitizer. Bring your own pen or swab. Vote alone. And what they mean by that is sometimes, like, people will have to, they'll bring their kids with them, or, they'll bring other family or whatever. Don't do that. Expose the fewest number of people in your family or your social circle that you can. And finally, review your plan. Make sure you know where you're going. Make sure you have your ID. Make sure that, you have, if you're going to bring a pen and your sanitizer, that you've got them out and got them ready. And one thing I think that's helpful is to make sure you know what you're going to vote for. So there's, I think it's like vote411.org. If that's not correct, you can just Google, voting information for my district. And I think that's it. And you put in, where you live, and they'll pull up your ballot, and you go through and you choose, you can read not only the people that are running, but then when it gets down to the amendments to the Constitution, I think we have 5 of them that we got to worry about this year. You can read the constitutional amendment and do that in your own home instead of having to do it in the voting booth. And then they will, so you mark your ballot, and then they will email it to you, and you can just take it in there with you, and then you don't have to think about it. You just fill in the bubbles, right? And then just double check, boom, go up, feed the machine, and get your little sticker, and you're on your way. Instead of having to stand there reading all that stuff and trying to decide through the double talk, what is it they're actually trying to pull on me here, you know? So have a plan and review your plan.
Very careful on the amendments, because Alabama is full of years where they have put intentionally misleading statements on the amendments on the ballots. So just be careful.
Amen to that. Yeah, be very careful. So read them carefully.
I went ahead and did absentee voting in person before I came down here to pick her up from Florida. And the wait was insane. It took me 3 hours, but also, the Greater Birmingham Ministries put together a little voter guide that shows you it. They have their opinions like under it. So I would use it if you can find it online. I would use it maybe as a starting point, but it was a nice little voter guide that they handed out so that while you were waiting in line, you could read up on some biographies and all the amendments. I don't know. I think it covered everything that was on my ballot, but I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, if you can find that online too, I don't know if they were in Jefferson County, but they can't cover every place. So I don't know how common it is for them to hand it out. But that was nice. We didn't get that in Dothan. No one bothered to do that. So just sharing that.
Okay. So Greater Birmingham Ministries also then.
They did a printed voter guide.
I think where I did early voting down at the courthouse this week, and I think it was actually, I'm not sure which Democratic Party it was, whether it was state or Jefferson County, but they had a similar, it was a blue sheet front and back that also was a voter guide. But I wanted to say this, that for a number of the judgeships, only one party is running somebody.
Yes.
And that's not typically a party I vote for. I'm trying to say this in a tax-friendly way. And so because that's not a party I vote for, I wasn't going to vote for those individuals. So I did come with some people that I thought might make good ones of those that I know. So I wrote in people.
Yeah,
that's a good idea. That is.
I think that's kind of what I plan on doing too. I just can't, in good conscience, just go along with, well, there's only one choice. I can't do that. So.
Yeah, I think also
the other party.
Sorry, Haley, go ahead.
I was just going to say, hopefully in the future, the other party will be better at putting people up, but it didn't happen this time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And obviously we've already voted, but moving forward, anytime you guys know of a person to write in that you could suggest, that would be great, because I would probably end up making names off the top of my head. But or any candidates that you all endorse. I'm not going to automatically endorse anyone because someone told me to, but I trust you guys, and if you suggest someone, I would certainly look up and consider it.
Okay. Well, we'll keep that in the friends group on Facebook.
Yeah.
Also, sorry if I missed it if you mentioned this, but AL.com usually does a breakdown too. I haven't looked it up to see if they do, but usually they do a breakdown. But to be fair, it is they take what is submitted by the candidate and put it in their blurb. So it's not an impartial breakdown. It is definitely an advertisement for themselves, the candidates. So just be careful. But it does give you kind of an overview of the amendments usually, and they give you kind of a little caption on the candidate. So
yeah. Well, and if one thing that does, I mean, even though it is the candidates writing stuff themselves, but I remember the last local election, it seemed like there was more local people running that I didn't know, so I had to do some research. And, it's if the candidate doesn't take the time to respond, or if their response is really kind of
That tells me something I need to know.
That tells me something I need to know. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there were, in that voter's guide that they handed out, there were at least 3, maybe 4 people where it said, our research has turned up no information. And I was like,
wow.
Okay. So, and I tried to look up like on just Google before I even went. And there are some people where I don't know who they are or where they come from, but their name's on there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I hope that I don't know. The trend for this is probably not going up. As crazy as this year has been, I don't know if we'll see a spike in younger people or new people coming to compete in all of these local elections. But it makes me really look at that and be like, we need more people. We need more people involved, because without anyone to go against, there's no motivation to even try to make yourself known when it's just this one person. It made me very mad, actually.
All right. Well, get out there. I think there's there's an organization. Is it called Emerge? And they especially are working on training and promoting young women to get involved in politics. So maybe you should look them up.
Yeah, I would absolutely.
Even if running it doesn't, do anything for you, being involved with an organization that's doing that might.
That's true. Yeah, I definitely can look them up.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay.